During one of the darkest periods of our country's history, the Filipino tapped into his culinary roots, once again using the environment and his ingenuity to feed himself. Our struggle to find food to sustain us highlights the Filipinos' resiliency despite adversity. Contact with the Americans created deep inroads into the Filipino mindset, prompting the rise of a new kind of social lifestyle.
With the change in colonial culture from Hispanic to American, there's also been a gradual change in tastes by the Filipinos under their new masters. Before, there was a preference for all things European, particularly Spanish. Now, because America is a rising nation, there is now a growing preference for American goods. And this would come also in the form of food.
It gradually developed over years, like over decades, and how the taste of the Filipino changes over the years. And it's largely because of the American period, especially in the urban centers.
One of the first things that Americans brought in were dairy products, evaporated, condensed, and powdered milk. This has been used to replace some recipes that originally used coconut milk. American products were now integrated into local recipes, such as the maha, which used to be made with rice flour, is now thickened with cornstarch. Other convenience goods like corned beef, canned beans, bottled mayonnaise, and bouillon cubes became mainstays in Filipino pantries. American sensibilities also trickled down to our condiments. One of the most important condiments introduced by the Americans was a ketchup. It was perfect with our barbecue, fried chicken, burgers, and fries. New methods of manufacturing allowed large-scale production of modern kitchen staples. The Americans also developed the technology to be able to create cooking oil in large volumes. This started our love affair with fried foods because cooking oil was now cheap and available to Filipinos. The availability of cooking oil, coupled with modern cooking appliances, brought about new culinary trends that captured the fancy of Filipinos, allowing them to reimagine old favorites. Because gas ranges provided a steady heat source, deep frying was now possible in the Philippines. Deep frying was not very popular during the Spanish era. What was popular was merely pan frying, but it did not achieve the crispness of food fried at the right temperature. Deep frying required a steady heat source to be able to fry food into a crisp consistency. Now we could cook our lechon kawali and fried chicken. Baking techniques were refined and improved on because of the advent of the modern oven. Ingredients like baking powder, baking soda, and yeast were also now widely available. The Filipino home cook would now come up with freshly baked goods like loaves of sliced bread in their own kitchens. One of the things that evolved because of the introduction of commercial ovens was our pandesal. The consistency of our classic pandesal changed because of the Americans. Before, it used to be baked straight on the oven floor, which sears the crust and gives it a crisp consistency. However, because of concerns of sanitation, the modern pandesal is baked on stainless steel pans, which slowly heats up and gives it a more tender texture. Even our indigenous ihaw and sinugba got an American makeover when barbecue parties became hip in Manila. The Americans loved barbecue parties because they wanted to have the fun and the sun in the Philippines, and barbecuing was the perfect way to do it. The Americans gave the Filipinos greater access to ingredients that they used in their everyday cooking. Traditional Filipino cooking methods were also tweaked, allowing the Filipino greater variation in their cooking arsenal.
One of the lasting contributions that the Americans made, especially in the development of the food culture in the Philippines, although it's indirect, is the establishment or the imposition of the Agrarian Reform Program.
This move abolished the remnants of the Spanish feudal system and created a new type of social layer for the Filipinos.
All these confiscated friar lands was given to tenant farmers, and then these tenant farmers became professionals. They went to study, like different disciplines in America as pensionados. And then when they return, they're like well educated and they man the farms themselves. So you develop a certain class in a society, which is a very, very important aspect, which is like the middle class.
In cultural studies and sociology, we usually talk about the concept of suburbia. We can call it the middle class or the group of people that have economic power and that they chose to stay in the suburbs around the periphery of a particular city. There was an upward mobile class of professionals and people with economic means that can buy mass-produced houses. They were also the consumers of generally mass-produced goods being sold in the supermarkets.
These close-knit communities saw the need for closer and more accessible sources of food.
The rise of the suburbia, you have the rise of the supermarkets. Because the population was growing exponentially, you have the rise of the corner store. The sari-sari store, where you can actually buy, the concept of tingi or per piece, like you can actually buy a sachet of Vetsin or a sachet of flavoring agent.
After years of devoted post-war rebuilding, there was finally time for merriment and a clamor for a life of luxury.
With the rise of mercantile class, automatically you have a disposable income. And then if you have that disposable income, it became aspirational. So they can afford to buy things that will make them not just on a survival mode, but really enjoy the finer things in life. Like they want to eat out, they want to be entertained a bit. And then comes the rise of the famous hotels in Manila, famous pansiteria, and then it became a full-blown restaurants.
While the concept of communal dining space was already present in the Philippines, these establishments were improved on to reflect the changing needs and tastes of the Filipino.
Generally, restaurants across the globe appeared mostly at the 19th century. In the Philippines, there were certain establishments that we can treat as public places where you could eat.
As a Filipino enjoyed greater prosperity after World War II, changes were taking place in how the Filipinos prepared his food. The Filipinos gained a convenience mindset stemming from the kitchen technology and pre-packed food products, promising to make cooking quick and easy. you.